Timothy Isaiah Courtright, commonly known as Longhair Jim, was both feared and respected in Fort Worth, Texas. Courtright had a colorful past on both sides of the law. Courtright had been the city marshal of Fort Worth, serving 3 terms. Afterwards, he was accused of being involved in 2 murders in New Mexico, and after escaping, was eventually arrested by Texas Rangers. He was later acquitted for lack of evidence. Back in Fort Worth, he created the TIC Detective Agency, the agency named after his own initials. But it seems Courtright was more interested in forming a protection racket and demanded payment from businesses. Longhair Jim was both popular and feared, a lawman and a bully. His life would end on February the 8th, 1887, when he pulled a gun on Luke Short. The following was written by Bat Masterson and published in Human Life magazine in April of 1907. In the spring of 1887, I visited Short in Fort Worth and learned soon after my arrival that he was having some trouble, which was likely to end seriously with a notorious local character by the name of Jim Courtright. It appears that this fellow Courtright, who had killed a couple of men in Fort Worth, also a couple more in New Mexico, and was therefore dreaded by almost the entire community, had asked Short to install him as a special officer in the White Elephant. Luke, who had been a substantial friend of Courtright's during his trouble at Fort Worth, told him he could not think of such a thing. "Why, Jim," said Luke, "I would rather pay you a good salary to stay away from my house entirely. You know," continued Luke, "that the people about here are all afraid of you, and your presence in my house as an officer would ruin my business." Courtright, who was a sullen, ignorant bully with no sense of right or wrong, could not see it as Luke did. He could not understand that it was a pure matter of business, and would be much better for Short to hire him to stay away from the house altogether than to have him coming around it. At any rate, Courtright got huffy at Luke and threatened to have him indicted and his place closed up. Courtright could not get it through his head how it was that Luke had dared to turn him down. He knew that he had everybody else in town buffaloed, and could see no reason why Luke should be different from the others. Luke and I were sitting together in the billiard room of the White Elephant one evening, discussing the trouble he was having with Courtright and the effect it was likely to have on his business. Just then, one of Luke's associates, by the name of Jake Johnson, came to where we were sitting and informed Luke that Courtright was in the outer lobby and would like to have a talk with him. "Tell him to come in," said Short. "I did invite him in," replied Johnson, "but he refused and said I was to tell you to come out." "Very well," said Luke, "I will see what he has to say," and immediately got up and accompanied Johnson to where Courtright was waiting. It did not take Luke very long after meeting Courtright to discover that the latter's mission was anything but one of peace. He brought along no olive branch, but instead a brace of pistols, conspicuously displayed. It was not a parley that he came for, but fight, and his demeanor indicated a desire that hostilities open up forthwith. No time was wasted in the exchange of words once the men faced each other. Both drew their pistols at the same time, but, as usual, Short spoke first, and a bullet from a Colt's .45 caliber pistol went crashing through Courtright's body. The shock caused him to reel backward. Then he got another, and still another, and by the time his lifeless form had reached the floor, Luke had succeeded in shooting him 5 times. Luke was arrested on the spot by a deputy sheriff and taken to the county jail, where he remained during the night. The next day, he was taken before a justice of the peace, who held him for the grand jury in a normal bond. This ended the case, as the grand jury refused to indict on the evidence, holding that it was a case of justifiable homicide. This ended Luke Short's shooting scrapes, with the exception of a little gun dispute 3 years later at Fort Worth, which had no fatal results. Jim Courtright was described as quick as lightning with a pistol. So how was it that even after drawing first, he would be killed by Luke Short without so much as even firing a shot? According to the Fort Worth Gazette, after the gunfight, Courtright's pistol was examined by the authorities. It was discovered that the cylinder would not revolve due to one of the cartridges. If Courtright's revolver had worked properly, it is possible Luke Short would also have been lying dead on the street. Courtright left behind a wife and 3 children. He was buried at Oakwood Cemetery in Fort Worth, his funeral being one of the largest ever held in the city. He was honored by the fire department, as he had also been a firefighter, and buried with honors from the Oddfellows Lodge. Luke Short was released after a preliminary hearing, and no trial would ever take place. Short would be involved in one more gunfight in Fort Worth in 1890 with a gambler by the name of Charles Wright. Both Short and Wright were wounded, but both survived the encounter.